in Belfast.
Tonight at 6, Princess Anne is in hospital with concussion after apparently being injured by a horse. The princess, who's 73, was walking on her estate in Gloucestershire yesterday when the incident happened. A man goes on trial accused of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder the TV presenter Holly Willoughby. Summer finally arrives for many, though heat health alerts warn of the risks to vulnerable people.
I'm here in Belfast looking at whether the political landscape might change in this general election. Also, how much more tax might we be paying? The main parties are accused of a conspiracy of silence over their election proposals. And the issues that matter to you. We speak to a mother who got in touch over the lack of support for carers.
On BBC London, an exclusive investigation. Shocked to find a cannabis farm in his home, how criminals are posing as tenants to grow illegal drugs inside people's houses.
Hello, welcome to the BBC News at 6. Princess Anne is in hospital with concussion tonight after apparently being injured by a horse. The incident happened on her estate in Gloucestershire yesterday. Buckingham Palace says the princess, who's 73, is expected to make a full recovery, though is likely to remain in hospital for some days. Here's our senior royal correspondent, Daniela Relf.
Just over a week ago, trooping the colour, the Princess Royal was on horseback, where she loved to be. An accomplished horsewoman, she played a leading part in the event. But last night, Princess Anne was injured on her estate, Gatcombe Park in Gloucestershire. It's understood she was hurt after coming into contact with a horse's head or legs while on a walk. In a statement, Buckingham Palace said, "The Princess Royal has sustained minor injuries and concussion following an incident on the Gatcombe Park estate yesterday evening. The King has been kept closely informed and joins the whole royal family in sending his fondest love and well wishes to the Princess for a speedy recovery." Year on year, Princess Anne tops the list of royals who carry out the most public engagements. Her work is often under the radar, without the glamour and attention others receive. But in a year where the royal family has faced serious health issues, her contribution has been more important than ever. Especially her support for her older brother. Their closeness and his appreciation of his sister have become more obvious since he became king. Princess Anne's accident just adds to the depleted number of full-time working royals at the moment. These have been challenging months, but there are now real gaps in terms of who can carry out public duties. Princess Anne is notoriously keen to avoid a fuss at all costs. But her injuries mean her engagements this week have been postponed, including a trip to Canada. She's likely to remain in hospital until later this week. Daniela Ralph, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent Dan Johnson is at Southmead Hospital in Bristol. How much more do we know, Dan?
We know that paramedics were called to Gatcombe Park in Gloucestershire yesterday evening to reports of this incident involving Princess Anne. It's still not clear exactly what happened, but the emergency responders assessed her and decided she needed to be driven by ambulance here to Southmead Hospital in Bristol. It's not necessarily the nearest hospital, but it is the major trauma centre for the region. So that perhaps indicates how seriously this incident was being taken, how cautious they were being with the care that Princess Anne needed. She is a tough, no-nonsense character, and the palace is emphasising that she will make a full recovery. Her condition is described as conscious, comfortable. She is stable, but she's expected to spend at least a few more nights here in hospital. So this is another senior member of the royal family unable to carry out her duties for at least the next few days, perhaps the next couple of weeks.
All right, thanks, Dan. Dan Johnson. A man has gone on trial accused of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder the TV presenter Holly Willoughby. Gavin Plum, who's 37 and from Essex, is alleged to have developed an obsession with the star over a number of years. He denies the charges. Our correspondent Lizo Mazimba was in court.
Good morning and welcome to your Wednesdays this morning.
Holly Willoughby is one of TV's best-known faces, a presenter on ITV's This Morning for 14 years. Her final 2 years on the popular daytime show was when the prosecution say that Gavin Plum was planning the presenter's kidnap and rape. The jury heard that in October last year, Plum, who was present in court, was communicating online with an individual about his plans in graphic detail, and that he sought to encourage the individual to commit kidnap, rape and murder with him, adding that what the defendant didn't know was that the person was an undercover police officer based in the USA. The court was told that the 37-year-old security guard had a sexual obsession with Holly Willoughby and that he'd previously made kidnap attempts against other women, trying to force 2 women from a train under the threat of a gun, and tried to tie the hands of 2 16-year-old girls at knife point. Any alleged victim of a sexual crime, like incitement to rape, automatically receives lifelong anonymity. In this case, Holly Willoughby has chosen to waive that. The prosecution also said that she wouldn't be a witness, as the case was only concerned with Plum's planning, which they say was interrupted by his arrest. The trial is expected to last 2 weeks. Gavin Plum denies the charges. Lisa Mzimba, BBC News, Chelmsford, Crown Court.
Now let's turn to the general election. For more on that, let's head to Rita in Belfast. Rita.
Jane, thank you. We're here in the iconic Titanic Quarter, which celebrates the city's proud shipbuilding past and which has become a monument to lessons learned from that tragedy. In a moment, we'll be looking at how the political landscape in Northern Ireland is changing and at what that means for people's priorities as they cast their vote in the general election. But first, the UK's main political parties have ducked addressing some of the stark choices over tax and spend in their manifestos. That's according to the leading think tank, the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Well, our economics editor, Faisal Islam, is with me, and they've got some stern words, haven't they?
Yeah, we've had several hundred pages, and the IFS say we haven't had a plan where voters can work out exactly how much tax they're going to pay. For those voters worried about public services, we haven't had a plan about how they're going to be funded properly. And we haven't had a plan for all the manifestos about how they might avoid a repeat of the 2022 mini-budget debacle. It's pretty scathing, it's a bit of a plague on all your houses, but they say voters deserve more. 10 days out from the election, we are now in a position to be able to compare the main parties' big offers, their promises to the electorate in the manifestos with the help of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. First, the size of the manifesto in tax and spend terms. This chart compares all the cash into the exchequer, so tax rises and spending cuts above the line, and the reverse below the line. Conservatives say they want about £30 billion of cash into the exchequer, like squeezing benefits, with the same amount out, including that national insurance cut. Labour's plans are half as big, targeting health and schools measures and green investment funded by smaller tax rises, for example on private schools. The Lib Dems and Greens are pushing for better resourced public services funded by significant tax rises, and Reform thinks it can shrink government and taxes radically. So how does all that affect tax? This is a chart since the Second World War of all the tax as a percentage of the size of the economy. You can see the rough pattern here. The Lib Dems and Labour would take this tax burden to the highest level since 1948. The Conservatives would stabilise it at the highest level since 1950. But the big picture is that all the parties would leave intact this rise in the tax burden we've seen over the past Parliament, this Parliament of emergencies, the pandemic and the energy crisis, and it wouldn't really fall. So why all this talk about spending cuts when the tax burden is doing that? Well, the Conservatives say they do want to spend more on defence, Labour on schools, but the real mystery here is about what's happening in unprotected departments, important spending on councils, courts, higher education, for example. There, we are not being told the full story.
We're either going to see some big tax increases or some spending cuts, given where we are with the public finances at the moment. And honestly, we don't know which way either party would go post-election. Neither of them want to say we're going to cut this. Neither of them want to say we're going to increase taxes here. But if they're going to keep to their own self-imposed fiscal discipline, they're likely to have to do one or the other.
The PM responded today by saying his plans are fully costed and will deliver tax cuts at every age. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said Labour's plans were about growing the economy after 14 years of flatlining. The Lib Dems also said their plans were fully costed, and the Greens, in a BBC Panorama interview, said their big plans to grow spending were not out of the ordinary internationally.
You're promising things that can't be delivered.
Well, and I've quoted to you what other experts have said welcoming our proposals, other economists, financial experts who've said the Green Party is bringing in a different way of thinking that by European standards is actually fairly normal, and we can't expect to have the level of health services, the quality of education system that other countries have if we don't put the investment in that's needed.
We aren't getting a full picture from any of these parties' manifesto, but you get a sense of the instincts on tax and spend and on the size of government going forward. But it is worth remembering that the experience of the past 5 years is that when the economic waters get choppy, many of these grand plans get dumped in the deep sea.
And if you want to hear more of Nick Robinson's interview with Adrian Ramsey, you can watch tonight at 7 p.m. on BBC One and also on the iPlayer. The Prime Minister has said that he's not aware of any other Conservative candidates being investigated by the Gambling Commission over allegations of betting on the general election. He's under mounting pressure from within the Conservative Party to take a tougher stance against those who are being investigated. Well, our political editor Chris Mason is at Westminster for us. And Chris, Rishi Sunak has faced more questions about this in just the last few minutes.
Yeah, evening to you, Rita. That's exactly right. So earlier today, the Prime Minister was in Edinburgh launching the Scottish Conservative manifesto there. Now he's back in London. He's just over the river, in fact, at the headquarters of the Sun newspaper. They are doing an event in front of the cameras and a live audience involving Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak. And yes, the opening minutes of the exchanges with the Prime Minister in the last half hour were absolutely on this topic. So we know that there are a collection of folk being looked into by the Gambling Commission, the betting regulator, and the Prime Minister had this to say about what the Conservative Party is doing.
In parallel, we have been conducting internal inquiries. These are very sensitive matters. They have to be done in a way that doesn't compromise the integrity of police and other investigations. But I've been crystal clear, if anyone has broken the rules, not upheld the standards that I would expect, then they will be held to account. They should face the full consequences of the law, and they will be booted out of the Conservative Party.
Can you see what this looks like to readers, to voters, to the public? It looks like the last days of Rome.
Harry, as I said, I share absolutely in people's... I'm as angry as anybody when I learnt about these things.
So a real attempt by the Prime Minister there, I think, to show that he has a grip on this. There's been some dissent internally amongst Conservatives privately and to a degree publicly, a frustration that the Prime Minister hasn't been willing to do or say more, to act more, to try and put a lid on all of this, because there is the prospect that there could be a dribble of further revelations in the coming days when the Prime Minister and other Conservatives would rather talk about anything else.
OK, Chris, many thanks. Chris Mason there. The DUP has launched its election manifesto, pledging to push for better financial support of Northern Ireland and to promote the union. The party is fielding 16 candidates. Its leader, Gavin Robinson, said voters needed to be proactive or risk taking Northern Ireland in the wrong direction.
If you want a stronger, more prosperous Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom, then you need to vote for it. If you want a strong pro-union team who will fight for Northern Ireland, then you need to vote for it by backing people who believe in Northern Ireland and who will do the job you elect them to do.
Well, here in Northern Ireland, the focus is not on the main British political parties, but on parties which have reflected the central historical fault line in politics here. That is those who want to remain a part of the UK, represented by the unionist parties, and the nationalist parties who want to see the province become part of the Irish Republic. Unionism is currently dominated by the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, who had 8 seats in Westminster at the last election, and nationalism by Sinn Féin, who had 7 seats. The SDLP had 2. But the debate in this part of the UK has also been strongly affected by the issue of Brexit. Northern Ireland voted to remain in the EU, and it's the only part of the UK to share a land border with an EU state, Ireland. Since the referendum, one-party alliance has grown significantly. It's pro-Remain but neutral on whether Northern Ireland should be part of the UK or Ireland, and it's challenging the pro-Leave DUP in some of their strongholds. Our correspondent Chris Page looks now at these 2 thorny issues, Northern Ireland's place in the UK and its place in the EU, and how it could be changing the face of politics here.
The Brexit journey has taken Northern Ireland in a different direction to the rest of the UK, and the final destination is still uncertain. At this music festival, people say there have been years of political disharmony since the referendum.
There was a lot of misinformation that maybe led to a vote that people didn't want.
Northern Ireland really isn't capitalising on the position that we're in, being the link between the UK and the rest of Europe. I feel like that's been a completely wasted opportunity.
Northern Ireland's in the unique position of having full access to the EU and British markets. But there's also been a trade border in the Irish Sea, checks on goods arriving here from Great Britain. That led the Democratic Unionist Party to veto the formation of a power-sharing devolved government for 2 years, until a new agreement 4 months ago.
It's not a job done, but it's significant work progress, and we're going to build on that in the future.
8 years ago today, the Brexit referendum result was declared, a result the DUP welcomed at the time. There are those who will say Brexit's fundamentally damaged the Union.
The people chose what they wish to see the future of this country being. It was delivered for Great Britain. It has not been delivered for Northern Ireland, and in that respect, democracy has been dishonoured.
Another pro-Brexit party, the traditional Unionist Voice, is accusing the DUP of compromising too much. But Unionists who opposed Brexit say they've been proved right.
Brexit purists, they haven't got the Brexit they wanted. That's the problem. But the Brexit they wanted could never be delivered. The whole cohesion of the Union has been damaged because of Brexit. But the Irish Sea border needs to go.
Irish nationalists ultimately want to remove another border, the land frontier with the Republic of Ireland. They argue that most people in Northern Ireland would want to rejoin the EU, and Irish unity is the only way to do it.
I don't think it's likely, given the political context, particularly in England, that any government will rejoin the European Union. I genuinely believe that it'll be very difficult to get back into the European Union as full members while we're still part of the UK.
In recent years, Sinn Féin has become the first nationalist party to win the most seats in councils and the devolved assembly. It says Brexit has caused too much blockage.
People want to see us move forward. People want to see that strong leadership. People want to see the positive change in their communities.
Unionists say they want to work with the next Westminster government to remove any remaining trade barriers between here and the rest of the UK. Are you prepared to work with them in that?
We will work with anybody to at the end of the day to eradicate any barriers there may be. But as we said from the outset of Brexit, Brexit was always going to mean friction. Brexit was always going to mean barriers and new borders.
Brexit has arguably increased the focus on constitutional issues, but the party, which is neither unionist nor nationalist, has grown strongly.
Alliance isn't advocating for a united Ireland or for the United Kingdom. What we're advocating for is the best possible outcome for Northern Ireland. I believe that closer alignment between the UK and the EU is best for Northern Ireland. I also believe it has benefits for the rest of Ireland and the rest of the UK.
Concert goers suggest historical identity politics is weakening.
Issues that matter. Education's always very important, and the economy, so we're getting to real politics here in Northern Ireland.
Elections show which way politics is moving. In Northern Ireland, perspectives are shifting, not least because of Brexit. Chris Page, BBC News, Belfast.
Now, throughout this election, we've been asking you to get in touch with us to tell us what issues you would like us to cover through your voice, your vote. Jacqueline Wood, who lives 10 miles from here in Lisburn, contacted us about the issue of support for those caring for people with learning difficulties. Coletta Smith went to meet her.
Hello, Jacqueline.
Hello, Coletta. Sometimes the quietest people can have the most powerful voices. Jacqueline's one of them, a full-time carer for her daughter Emma, who has special needs.
She knows everywhere. She's just a wonderful person.
Do you want
to say hello to
Coletta? Why did you contact us?
Because absolutely nobody is talking about the learning disabled.
Jacqueline only gets half her allocated hours of home support because of a constant battle for staff.
They're the most vulnerable people in society from the day they're born until the day they die. And they have to put them into a special category and pay a special category salary to the people who are doing such a good job caring for them. If they don't do that, they will never solve the problem.
Jacqueline's knitted a support network of other carers and families around her, but they're all struggling with the local respite centre closed at the moment.
Having a baldy, why we come bottom of the list. I think other things just seem to get priority.
The trust in charge told us they are working to provide local respite care again, but it can't come soon enough for Beth in her 80s, who cares for her sister Jenny.
We carers are saving the government a mint of money over the years. You know, and I think they should be producing the goods to help.
My biggest heartache is that Emma has nowhere to go when I die. The politicians in Westminster and in all the devolved assemblies have been weighed in the balance and they've been found wanting. I don't know how they look in the mirror.
This election, Jacqueline and her friends are hoping someone will hear their voices and support them in daily life.
What we all say is the sun rises and we get up with it, and you get through that day.
And Coletta is here with me. Such a tough situation for everyone you talk to, Coletta. What are the political parties saying they'll do about it?
Well, the frustration for carers like Jackie here, and in fact carers right the way across the UK, is that very little specific detail has been given, particularly around those caring for people with special needs. There is, however, broad agreement across most of the parties that the system is struggling to cope and is in need of major reform. The Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party have both touched on the suggestion that increasing that minimum wage or making a higher minimum wage for people who are carers may well help solve the recruitment problem in the sector at the moment. But of course, funding for daycare centres and respite care centres are devolved issues. So it's up to the parties here at Stormont in Northern Ireland as to how they use that funding and how they divide it up. But of course, it's the same politicians and the same political parties standing for election in Westminster as here at Stormont. So for voters here, they're wanting to hold those politicians to account to the same degree. And for those lives who are impacted, they're hopeful that people making choices at Westminster and here may well improve their lives in the coming months, but nobody's holding their breath, Rita.
OK, Coletta, many thanks. Coletta Smith there. Time now to find out how the election campaign is shaping up across the UK. In a moment, we'll hear from Sharon Edwards, who's BBC Lincolnshire's political reporter and is in the constituency of Gainsborough. But first, let's go to Peterborough and to BBC Cambridgeshire's political reporter, Kate Moser-Andon. Kate.
Thanks, Rita, and welcome to Peterborough, the biggest city in the east of England and one of the fastest growing in the UK. It's home to a stunning medieval cathedral and the ultra-modern Anglia Ruskin University Peterborough. People here say it can be nearly impossible to get hold of an NHS dentist, and some Peterboreans are fed up with fly tipping and local high street shop closures. The city recently won nearly £23 million in Towns Fund money, and that will go towards regenerating the city centre. Now, the Conservatives won here in 2019, but more recently in local elections in May, lost half of their seats to independents and other parties. It's a diverse city. Nearly 18% of the population is Muslim. So it will be interesting to see if each party's policies on the conflict in Gaza has an impact. For decades now, people in Peterborough have either elected Labour MPs or Conservative MPs, and it's been fairly close, making this one to watch.
Kate, thank you. And let's hear now from Sharon, who's in the constituency of Gainsborough in Lincolnshire. Sharon.
Well, Rita, Greater Lincolnshire produces 30% of the country's fresh vegetables. But this county is also subject to 14 very large solar farm applications on farmland, including some of the fields that you can see behind me. Some residents are absolutely furious that food-producing land could be given over to these solar projects, although the companies behind them say they're not using the most fertile land. Nevertheless, this is coming up again and again and again in these election campaigns across Lincolnshire, as is pylons. National Grid wants to build a new line of pylons near the Lincolnshire coast to take green energy from Scotland to the southeast of the country. Lincolnshire County Council is complaining that we're being used as a dumping ground for green energy. It's even threatening legal action because it says the residents and the businesses here won't get any direct benefit when it comes to their energy bills.
Sharon, thank you. And just a reminder that you can find a full list of all the candidates standing in the general election on the BBC News website. Well, that is it from us here in Belfast. Back to you now, Jane, in the studio.
Rita, thanks very much. A 12-year-old boy with severe epilepsy has become the first patient in the world to trial a new device fitted to his skull to control seizures. Oren Nosen from Somerset was having multiple seizures a day, some of them life-threatening. Our medical editor Fergus Walsh has been following his treatment. Just to warn you, this report contains images of surgery and of a seizure.
Epilepsy dominates Oren's life. His parents know he could have a seizure at any moment. Some are so severe he stops breathing.
So this is a tonic-clonic. You can see he's rigid.
Quinn, baby, I need your help, please. Quinn.
This is distressing to watch, but it illustrates what Oren and his family have endured for years.
Turn the bathroom light on.
Every moment of his life is affected because of his epilepsy. I want Oren back. I want him to find some of himself again through the haze of seizures. I'd like to get my boy back.
Back here. It's October 2023. Surgeons at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London insert 2 electrodes deep into Oren's brain. These are connected to a neurostimulator in his skull that will deliver a continuous current designed to block the bursts of electrical activity which trigger Oren's seizures.
This study is looking at a new type of device which is particularly useful in children because the implant is in the skull and not in the chest, and we hope that that will reduce the potential complications. Not easy.
In the coming months, 3 more patients will undergo the same surgery here at Gosh as part of the first ever trial in the UK of this device to treat severe childhood epilepsy.
Well done. Walk on. Walk on.
And this is Oren 8 months on. His daytime seizures have reduced by 80%. Oren also has autism and ADHD, but he's becoming more active and independent.
Overall, we're seeing a much better quality of life, I think, and he's happier. The Great Ormond Street team gave us hope back, which was something we didn't have. And now the future looks brighter.
Oren's family know his treatment is not a cure, but they're optimistic he will continue to emerge from the shadow cast by his epilepsy. Fergus Walsh, BBC News, Somerset.
Now we will turn our attentions to the weather. Darren Bett is here. A hot day, Darren.
Yes, a bit of a cracker today, really, across many parts of the country, Jane. We saw the heat moving its way northwards all the way into Scotland today. And this was a Weather Watcher picture taken in Boyne, Aberdeenshire, where temperatures reached 27 degrees. It's been the hottest day of the year so far in Scotland, also the hottest day of the year so far in Northern Ireland and also in England, with temperatures 28 degrees. The only nation to miss out was Wales. Things are going to change a bit in the next few days. It will be cooler tomorrow in Scotland and Northern Ireland. We'll see some showers beginning to move down from the northwest, but it will be hot and humid for longer across England and also into Wales. Overnight tonight, we're going to be quite warm as well, particularly across parts of Lincolnshire and East Yorkshire. There will be more sunshine on the way for tomorrow across England and Wales. Again, a little bit cloudy around some of these western coastal areas, and we'll see the cloud bubbling up a bit across North Wales, particularly Northern England. A few showers over the Pennines. Should be largely dry for Northern Ireland despite more cloud, but we will see some rain in Scotland. There could be some heavy showers breaking out, particularly in the east in the afternoon. So temperatures are going to be lower, 19 in Belfast, 22 in the central belt of Scotland. Highest temperatures going to be through the Midlands, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire towards East Anglia and the southeast. Could reach 30 degrees in London. It's a bit too hot. As we head into Wednesday, more sunshine for much of England and Wales. Again, the risk of 1 or 2 showers over the high ground in Wales, northwest England and perhaps even into Scotland. More sunshine now, I think, across Northern Ireland. Those temperatures getting a little bit of a boost, but not as hot as today. Still very hot, though, across many parts of England and into Wales this time. Again, possibly 30 degrees in London. Things are going to change because this low pressure here is going to push this weather front eastwards. It's all about the timing, mind you. Cooler, fresher air coming in from the west. Still hot and humid, though, for East Anglia and the southeast. Jane.
All right, Darren, thank you very much. That's it for now. We're back at 10. Now it's time to join our colleagues for the news where you are. Bye for now.